Yeah, really? Okay, all right. Look, let's start with where you stand on a number of matters, so we can see to what extent, if at all, you would qualify under the government's definition of what they describe as a non-violent extremist. Do you think you qualify as a non-violent extremist?
That term itself is very politically loaded and quite weak as well, personally.
How would you define British values?
It's interesting you asked me that. I just recently made a VoxPox interview speaking to Londoners, and I asked them to define or describe British values in 4 words. And obviously we know that the current government has defined British values as the belief in democracy, religious tolerance, individual liberty, and the rule of law.
You're not suggesting that things like democracy, individual liberty, tolerance, respect for the rule of law and so on aren't, as it were, essential features of a democratic country?
Of course, they're the essential features of a democratic country, but John, I'm sure you'll understand that if you spoke to numerous members of the public and asked them to define or describe British values, they won't say those 4 things.
Yeah, but a government, surely the definition, it's perfectly legitimate for a government elected by the people to define what it stands for.
Yeah, but the problem here is once that definition becomes the criterion to judge who's an extremist and who's not, that's the problem I have.
Believing in a caliphate is a pretty fringe view in the United Kingdom. It may not be in parts of the Islamic world, but it certainly is in Britain.
But then again, Muslims are a minority within Britain.
Yeah, but we're talking about a very small minority of Muslims believing in a caliphate.
No, I don't think you can substantiate
that. Oh, you think lots of British Muslims believe in a caliphate?
Of course. I don't think you can substantiate that at all, John.
So what are they doing living here then?
Well, it's not about because the caliphate doesn't exist at the moment, does it?
No, but they would like to see, you're suggesting a significant number of Muslims in Britain would like to see an Islamic State in Britain?
No, I don't think they would like to see an Islamic State in Britain, not at all.
Right.
I don't think that's the objective.
Would you like to see an Islamic State in Britain?
No, not at all. No.
Where would you like to see an Islamic State?
I'd like to see a true, just Islamic State, a caliphate in the Muslim world, where it's existed before.
Why would you like to see that?
Because I personally believe that, as a Muslim, that the best ruling system is one that was ordained by God and the Prophet.
Why wouldn't you want to see one here then?
Because this is something that's strange to the people, and it would be alien to the people, and we would never want to pressure the indigenous people of this country and my fellow citizens with something that they are not aware of. It would not be natural.
Would you like to work for an Islamic state in this country? I mean, promote the idea, non-violently, obviously.
What, for it to be established here?
Yes.
No, because I do not follow that opinion.
Let me ask you whether he's described democracy as filthy. Do you think it's filthy?
No, I don't. I just think it's a different ruling system to that of the one that Islam or classical Islam promotes.
Inferior to it?
Pardon?
You're entitled inferior to an Islamic system, the democratic system.
I don't think
man-made laws inferior to God-made laws.
John, I think we need to just let me just bring it back to the actual reality, right? I think the word inferior, all them, filthy. I think these are quite loaded terms.
Well, I didn't use them. Your colleague Haitham Haddad.
Sheikh Haitham is not my colleague. So anyway, regarding whether democracy is filthy or inferior, I think these are very politically loaded terms. I don't think they're the correct term. I think as a Muslim, I'm entitled to believe that what God has revealed in the Quran and the message that the Prophet came down with is the best solution for all of mankind's problems and affairs. That doesn't necessarily mean democracy is filthy, or communism is nasty, or anarchism is smelly. Nothing like that. Yeah, I think those words are wrong. It's just a different ruling system to that which you believe was ordained by God and His Messenger, and one which you believe is the correct one and to have the solution for all of mankind's affairs. Mm-hmm. And just to address one thing as well, regarding British values, John, if we talk about religious tolerance, in our theology, in our religion, in our long history, Jews and Christians have lived in peace. We refer to them as people of the book. In Medina, pagan Arabs lived amongst the Muslims in the first Islamic state. There is a concept of religious tolerance. In the Quran it says, La ikra fid din. There is no compulsion in religion. So there's a concept of religious tolerance within our religion. That's the first thing. Rule of law. I'm a British citizen. I was born here. I was educated here. I have non-Muslim friends. I'm a citizen of this country. I want the best for this country. I want this country to prosper. And therefore, I have a contract of security with this country, and I would never do anything to harm it. I would only want it to improve and prosper, and I don't want it to... I don't...
Sure, carry on, please.
I don't only want it to prosper, but more importantly, I would want the government to take the correct steps to prevent any harm from its citizens. And that includes its foreign policy antics, which can have a blowback on this country. So just to highlight that to you, like, you know, when we're talking about British values, I just want to say to you...
No, I understand. You're totally opposed to terrorism in this country.
Of course, all day long, every day. And not just in this country. No, not just in this country. All around the world.
Well, it depends how we define terrorism,
of course.
But look, just to be clear, and I'm not trying to make a cheap point. I just want to be factual about this. Yeah. Are you a member of HUT, Hizb ut-Tahrir?
No, I'm not.
Right. Have you ever been a member?
Never.
Never taken the oath?
Never.
Right. But 5 Pillars is aligned to Hizb ut-Tahrir. Is that a fair comment?
Not at all.
Really?
Yeah. When you said that in the Independent, I was actually quite shocked.
We can at least get a glimpse of what you believe in, and we can see to what extent.
I've just told you what I believe.
Well, let's drill down a bit.
Yes, go for it.
All right, fair enough. Do you believe apostates should be killed in an Islamic state?
I believe that there's not a concept of killing apostates.
Well, a death penalty for apostates.
But I don't even believe in a death penalty for apostates. This is we're applying English terms to Arabic terminology.
You know exactly what I mean, though.
No, but it's important because classically, what you regard as apostasy in your English definition is seen as rebellion.
And if someone did that in a properly constituted Islamic state where Sharia was the law of the land, would you support the death penalty for someone saying, you know what, I know I was born a Muslim, but I've changed my mind?
If someone decides to leave the faith in an ideal Islamic state and they leave their faith, they're entitled to do so. We don't do thought police.
Yes, they're entitled to do so, but they may suffer the consequence of death. Would that be justified? You know exactly what I'm asking you. Come on.
No,
would death be justified in your view or not as a penalty for leaving the faith? Yeah, I mean, it's a simple question. Yeah.
No, but these are hypothetical scenarios you're giving me. Right, these are hypothetical scenarios you're giving me. First of all, I just explained to you that the English definition of apostasy, to apply that to the Arabic term murtadin or murtad, is different because you're applying an English definition to an Arabic terminology.
Well, I'm applying your definition.
So my opinion is this. If someone who is a Muslim lives in an ideal Islamic state, one that does not exist, and decides one day...
to be clear about that, there isn't in your view, there isn't an Islamic state ideally anywhere in the world at the moment.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, not ISIS land, not Saudi, not Iran. No country exists. Right. No such state exists.
But let's get back to the ideal state.
In this ideal state, someone decided to leave their faith, and why should they be killed?
So you'd oppose the death penalty?
You see, again, it's a case of someone. If this individual then came out, for example, and then began a movement which would be perceived or understood as an open rebellion, then theologically speaking, I could understand why that position exists.
Right. You can understand why the state would oppose that in some shape or form.
Yeah.
And including the death penalty.
Yeah, I can see why the state would do that.
Can you therefore see why the United Kingdom, which is rooted in free speech, democratic values, tolerance and so on, should embark on a strategy which may or may not include changing the law, a strategy to confront and challenge views antithetical to the values of of the United Kingdom?
Not at all.
Why not?
Because I think it's absolutely ridiculous that the government is now going to apply laws and legislations and measures simply for views that individuals hold.
No, not views. No. I don't think that, to be fair to the government, I don't think they, in fact, I'm sure they haven't said they're going to try. How could they?
Oh, for those who
it's about public
for those that advocate public expression. Well, again, look, if the government and those who oppose this kind of ideology have conviction that theirs is far more intellectually superior, then why not allow open debate and open dialogue? Why not? We're supposed to be a country of free speech. Are we now going to start censoring this so-called inverted commas extremist ideology, which we're so frantically insecure about, that we don't believe our values are stronger than this extremist ideology? That's what I think.
Okay, so essentially your point is, if you believe in the power of argument, why abandon
why shut down
that
debate?
as a...
Why shut down debate? If you've got a problem with Sheikh Haytham, then sit down and have a debate with him. If you've got issues with certain speakers and organisations...
Sure. Well, a lot of people would agree with you, actually, even people who are totally opposed to your views.
Yeah.
But my point is, you don't apply that logic to the rights of the individual in an Islamic state. That's where there's a double standard in your thinking, is there not?
No, you see, the problem here is, John Ware, you're applying a set of values, right? And you're perceiving the Islamic State or an ideal caliphate or whatever it is. And by the way, just for your record, there was only ever an ideal, sort of flawless Islamic State with the 4 first Khalifas. From the Umayyads to the Abbasids to the Ottomans, there were huge problems, even in terms of rule of law, accountability, transparency, and so forth. But you're applying a certain viewpoint through the lenses, or the secular liberal paradigm, because you've set liberal democracy as the benchmark, as the criterion, as Fukuyama, the end of history. Well, your questioning is sort of alluding to that anyway, that you see liberal democracy as the best ruling system for all of mankind. Therefore, I'm going to perceive an Islamic state.
Least worst, maybe.
Least worst, best, however you want to perceive it. But you're perceiving an Islamic state and its theological foundations, its wider spiritual objectives through the lenses and the paradigm of secular liberal democracy. And that's a problem. And this is something that will entail a longer discussion, because at the end of the day, you can say that to me, oh, well, Dilly, you believe in free speech, but you wouldn't apply that in your Islamic state. Well, John, first of all, again, this is all hypothetical. That Islamic state doesn't exist. And I've said to you twice already that I'm a citizen of this state, right? So I have every right, as you and the person in this room, as well as any other Briton, to believe in these views. Why not?
I don't think anybody's suggesting you don't have a right.
But then you keep using it as a yardstick to beat me with.
No, I'm just trying to find out whether you qualify under the government's terms, so far not absolutely clearly defined.
Okay. Can I just say one thing for the record as well?
Yeah.
Right. Do you believe free speech is absolute?
Well, I'm not here to answer these questions on this occasion.
Okay, fine. Okay, but fine. Let me answer. Let me answer.
Can I carry on?
No, but it's important because I need to clarify this point, because you asked me about free speech.
Sure.
There is no such thing as free speech, absolute free speech. Yeah. There's laws and restrictions to what you can say. We have libel laws. We have defamation laws. We have hate speech laws. We have public disorder laws. We have all kinds of laws that sort of restricts and limits what an individual can say, incitement to racial hatred and so forth. Yeah. So what I'm saying is there is no concept of absolute free speech. So similarly in an Islamic state...
Yeah. I'm talking about right to life, which is a fundamental right. But look, let's move on.
About free speech. But anyway, go for it.
Again, back to the idealised Islamic state, or even in... for example, Saudi Arabia or states. I mean, Saudi would regard itself as an Islamic state. It may not be an ideal Islamic state from your point of view.
So would ISIS.
But in any event, do you think in an Islamic state someone who commits adultery should be stoned to death? Is that a view you hold?
Again, let me just explain to you the ruling behind the whole stoning the adulterer.
Yeah.
And let me explain to you how near impossible in a real Islamic state that would be. In a case of adultery, you'd have to have witnesses that see the physical act of penetration. And if the act of adultery happens in one's private home, then they have the individual rights for no one to spy on them. So let me just give you a context what it is, right? Because you can ask me that question and I can say yes or no, John. I can, yeah. But I think it's very important for the sake of your documentary that this context is included. That the ruling behind the stoning of the adulterer is that people see the physical act of sexual penetration. If that act is taking place in a private home, right, then that law or case fails because you're not allowed to spy in someone's private home.
All right, so that being the case, is it your view that women, or even men, but I think mainly women...
No, women and men.
Or what?
Please do not just highlight women, please.
Fair enough, okay. Well,
and please do not use Saudi and Iran and ISIS as an example.
Well, let me just finish the point, if I may.
Yeah.
Is it your view then that the death penalty by stoning or by whatever means for adulterers, as is currently practiced, as indeed it is in some Muslim countries, is...
I disagree with it.
You disagree with
unequivocally.
it? Right.
Please get that on record, yeah? You've got it on record. I unequivocally disagree with the implementation of any capital punishment by any country or state at this present moment in time. Including
Islamic states for crimes like their crimes,
including
adultery,
including ISIS, including Saudi Arabia, including Iran, including parts of Yemen and Pakistan. And
that would include also applying the death penalty for gays as well.
Everything.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. So we talked. I mean, this is helpful. You talked earlier about tolerance and the importance of tolerance. Yeah. Do you regard yourself as a tolerant individual?
Definitely.
Do you?
Yes, definitely.
Would you regard what you said about Ahmadiyas as an example of tolerance?
No, I was just stating a mainstream theological position. You want to explain that position? Because you failed to include it in your... You didn't even contact me to ask me in your article. You could have asked me.
What? I'm quoting you, what you've said about Ahmadiyas. I've known monkeys that have a more legitimate claim to Islam than Ahmadiyas. Because, animals submit to Allah. That's what you tweeted.
So in mainstream Islamic theology, we consider animals to be Muslims, right? We believe animals to be Muslims. We believe they submit and prostrate to God. Now, Ahmadis are not considered Muslims in mainstream across the four schools of thought. Sunnis and Shias, the two main denominations, they do not regard Ahmadis as Muslims.
Yes, I know that, but they certainly do. And they're a minority in this country.
Okay, that's fine.
Lots of other people.
Okay, let me just give you an example. That's like a Hindu coming to me and saying, "I'm a Muslim." Am I just supposed to say, "Yes, you're a Muslim," but yet you do not believe in the basic foundations of the belief?
Yeah, but you're saying the clear suggestion there, and I would suggest to you that's quite a racist suggestion.
Not at all.
Well, I'm going to suggest to you that it is.
Where's the race?
I'll tell you. The suggestion that Ahmadiyas are inferior to monkeys, I think, is quite a racist.
That's your interpretation.
Suggestion.
That's your interpretation, and quite a warped one as well.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you have to use the analogy of monkeys? Why can't you just say, "Well, I don't accept their, mainstream Muslims"?
You have to.
You also have to. It's a pretty intolerant thing to say.
No, not at all.
No?
Absolutely not. I think what you've done is you've taken out one tweet from a Twitter spat, which is. As I say, I respectfully say this, it's quite reflective of, some would argue, your journalism. But anyway, you've taken one tweet.
It's quite reflective of your state of mind.
No,
actually.
Not necessarily. You took one tweet in a Twitter spat, right? And you totally ignored what was said to me from Ahmadiyas. You ignore that. But what you see, and there's people...
Well, tell me, what's been said to you about Ahmadiyas?
They've called me a jihadi, they've called me a child killer, in that very same spat. All the tweets are still there.
But does that justify calling them monkeys?
Not
even as worthy as monkeys.
Where did I call them monkeys?
I've known monkeys that have more legitimate claim.
But where did I call them monkeys?
Well, you're not calling them monkeys. You're saying actually.
And where is it racist? Tell me where it's racist.
You're saying that they are inferior. They have an inferior claim. Ahmadiyas have less of a claim.
Ahmadiyas are not a race.
Less of a claim even than monkeys to your faith.
Yeah, no, okay.
I'm suggesting that's quite a racist,
first of all,
hateful thing to say to a community, to a minority who may well have attacked you, but who live in this country. It's quite an intolerant thing to say.
I
You
disagree
don't think
with
so?
you. I disagree with you.
All right, and you say that's just an isolated tweet. Actually, it isn't, is it? You called, you had another Twitter spat with
As people do.
with Mina Topia.
Let's be realistic about something, right? People have Twitter spats all the time.
Mm.
Yeah, people say things all the time. Katie Hopkins says things all the time. Your friends from the Quillian Foundation always say things all the time.
My friends?
Yeah, your friends, your particular liking anyway. But you know, they use certain language, and I must say, John, that wasn't my proudest moment at all. I am very upset that you had to use that language, and actually,
You had to. Why did you have to?
You're emotional. You know, sometimes you don't think, and you say those things. People go, let me just show to you.
But can I just, as I say, by all means, do show me to you. I want to hear your response. Of course, I do.
Please can you read that out.
But before I do, and I will read it out in a minute. But let me
Yep.
just finish the point, if I may. What these tweets suggest to me is that you are intolerant of Muslims. Hang on, who have a different view of how your faith should be interpreted.
No, I disagree with you because I'm
Really?
open to debate. I invited Mina Topia to a debate. She doesn't want to debate me.
Why did you call her a coconut sellout? That's a pretty racist thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah,
Coconut? It's quite racist.
like I said, I wasn't. It
What does
wasn't.
coconut mean?
You know what coconut means.
Well, you tell
John.
me.
No, you tell me.
Well, I know exactly what it means, but you tell
I know
me.
what-
You tell me why it
No,
doesn't
no.
amount to racism.
No, but I just said to you that my exchange with Mina Topia wasn't my proudest moment.
No.
I apologized to her. My language was bang out of order, and it wasn't my proudest moment. And I would never resort to that kind of language ever again, because as a Muslim, it wasn't befitting of a Muslim. My etiquette was out of order. But just to again give you a bit of context, Mina Topia said to me, had I been your mother,
Yeah.
I would have had an abortion so I wouldn't give birth to a Muslim like you. So in that context, in that heat, I responded in a manner like that. Can you please...
I understand.
Okay,
You felt you were provoked. I understand.
but can you not,
But-
I'm showing John Ware a tweet where I apologized to Mina Topia. I said, I'm sorry for calling you names. It's a real shame that you can't swallow the concepts that I believe in without resorting to insults
Fair
first.
enough. Okay.
So I apologized. Humans make mistakes, John.
I note that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But I just want to finish the point about whether you regard it, and I appreciate this was, people do say things they regret later, and you've made it clear you regret it.
And Twitter
But
spats happen all the time.
They do.
They happen all the time.
They do. But I suppose the serious point here is that you didn't. You signalled really that you didn't really believe that she was a proper Muslim. At least when you had another Twitter spat with Sarah Khan. So it wasn't a one-off, was it? You had a Twitter spat with Sarah Khan, or you described Sarah Khan of Inspire as a sort of sympathetic to neocon ideology and that kind of thing. I think you said she was an ultra minority of secular liberal Muslims, and you put Muslims in quotes as if you didn't really think she's a proper Muslim, I suppose. That's the way she took it, I think.
Mina Topia.
Do you think she is a proper Muslim?
If she believes,
whatever that means.
If she believes in God and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then I believe she's a Muslim.
Right. Why did you put Muslim then in Sarah Khan's next to Sarah Khan's name in quotes? Because that signalled that you didn't really think she was a proper Muslim.
No, that's how you read it. The reason why I put that in.
Why'd you put it in quotes then?
Well, I'm about to tell you. Will you let me answer?
Sure.
Okay. The reason why I put it in inverted commas is because some of the views and opinions that she advocates, she does so as if it's the mainstream position, which it's not. That's why.
Well,
I don't because remember, when you talk about mainstream, you need to back it up obviously with some kind of
evidence.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that. Let's go to the Pew survey of what you would call normative beliefs for Islam. I just want to look. I'm just trying to turn up the page because I've noted them down in various places. Now, it is true that this. I mean, first of all, do you regard the Pew survey as, broadly speaking, accurate empirical evidence?
Yeah, it's an empirical evidence.
Yeah,
of course,
okay.
of course.
All right. Well, they did a survey in, I don't know, 28 Muslim countries, or where Yes, Muslim countries, or even
Muslim
where
majority.
Muslims are majority. I think
Yeah, okay.
almost exclusively Muslim,
Okay.
actually. And I know that your particular complaint, and I understand this, about the government's proposals are that they impact on not a fringe view, but a normative view. That's your position,
Yeah.
is it not? Well, even in some other Muslim countries, how many Muslims do you suppose are in favour of making Islamic law in, say, Azerbaijan?
I don't know what research you're referring to. So are you telling me to just guess numbers?
8%.
Fine.
In Albania, 12%.
Okay.
That's not a normative view in either of those countries, is it?
But that'd probably come down to the fact that the country itself and the government, the education curriculum is secular in nature.
Well, it may be, but the point is, it's not a normative
but
view.
you can't-
You can't
John,
assert
John,
that
you can't-
your view is a normative view.
No, you're absolutely wrong there. What you've done is that's fine. The Pew Research done its study or research in a number of countries. These countries at the moment they are secular countries, and the normative beliefs that I believe in is not being taught, and it's not something that they'd study and understand and come to terms
My
with.
point is, it's your interpretation. It's not a normative view.
It's not my interpretation. Of course not. How can it be my interpretation? I've not written any books or anything.
Well,
It's not my interpretation.
For example, when it comes to a caliphate, you assert, don't you, that it is the unambiguous view, I think you say, or unanimous view of scholars, Sunni scholars.
Yeah.
That a caliphate is what normative Islam says is an obligation on Muslims to promote.
No, it's a state governed by Sharia that is in the form of a caliphate is the best ruling system for mankind. That's what I said. I didn't say.
Well, you say it's a unanimous consensus among classical and temporary scholars within Sunni Islam that the caliphate is the ideal form of governance, and to work for its establishment is an obligation. That's what you say. That's simply not true.
So name me some scholars in.
Well, okay, how about Sheikh Khaled Abdul Aziz Omran, who is the head of training at Al-Azhar? He has written the foreword to a paper which says there is no such definitive reading of religious scripture as the one you're advancing.
Okay. When did he say that?
Do you rate Al-Azhar?
Not necessarily.
Ah, I see.
Not necessarily.
Even though it happens to be
It was once rated.
font of
It was Al-Azhar. It was the most esteemed and respected classical scholarship.
And when did it stop being?
When it started backing brutal dictators like Mubarak and Sisi, which this government supports as well.
I see.
And when it started condoning and advocating and permitting the murder of thousands of Muslims, not too long
All right,
ago.
so you wouldn't accept the head of graduate training at Al-Azhar.
I can't take
It's a
someone
pretty
who-
prestigious
very prestigious.
institution.
No, I agree.
And it doesn't actually agree
but what I'm saying
with
is- what
the
I'm saying is-
Mubarak government or any other
No,
government. It takes...
No, it actually does. I mean, I don't know if you've been following events in Egypt.
Right.
Al-Azhar is fully backing President al-Sisi, and he actually referred to those peaceful protesters in Rabal al-Adawiyya as terrorists, and he condoned their killings. So I can't take them seriously for that reason.
I suppose my point is there is no such thing as a definitive religious ruling or reading of the scriptures, if only because Islam is the least monolithic faith in the world, and there are, as you know better than me, a vast number of different interpretations. But you assert it as if there is only one.
No. You see, John.
And that's
No, John.
why some of your views, if I would suggest with respect, are extreme to the extent that they diverge significantly from a majority view.
No, right. What I mean by normative Islamic beliefs is that concepts which have been there from the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, throughout the centuries, up to contemporary scholarship. And these things include what I mentioned to you earlier. The right to legitimate physical defensive jihad when your land, property and women are under attack.
Mm-hmm.
The implementation and belief that Sharia, God's law, is the best set of laws for mankind. I don't think your friend from Al-Azhar would actually oppose that, had I said that.
Okay. On this question of, this is not a pejorative question, I genuinely want it clarified.
That's fine.
You, on the question of violent jihad, quote unquote, under what circumstances do you, just to be clear, do you support that? Define the circumstances for me.
Again, I don't know whether you're doing this intentionally or it's just out of ignorance, but the kind of terminology that you're using in phrasing your question.
Or offensive, or, well, first of all, do you believe in offensive or defensive jihad?
I believe at this current moment in time, if your land, your women, your property, your commerce is under attack, then you have the right to defend yourself, just like you would in this country if your life was in danger.
Yes,
you would come to the defense of your family.
Now, so you would support what was described as the resistance movement in Iraq against coalition forces.
Yes.
Yes, even if that resistance killed soldiers belonging to the army of which you are a citizen.
I believe in everyone's right to defend their land property. And therefore, if a foreign invader comes, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, and their land, women and property is being attacked, then I believe they have the right to defend themselves.
And as I say, that would, even if it means killing soldiers, as I say, from the army of which you are a citizen, even if it means killing soldiers who belong to an army of a country of which you are a citizen. In other words, British soldiers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Are you justifying...
If that soldier had threatened the life of an innocent Iraqi and put his life, his womenfolk in danger, then I'm guessing the Iraqi individual, just like any other individual, will do what he needs to do to look after and defend his family and property.
Well, let's take...
just like if an Iraqi soldier came to this country and tried doing it to anyone else, they have the right to defend themselves.
So you supported Iraqi, quotes, resistance forces shooting or killing British soldiers?
No, I was against the war, full stop.
Yes, I know you were, but I'm saying, given that it happened, were you in favour of British soldiers being killed by what you would describe as the resistance in Iraq?
You see, again, the way you've worded it is
it's pretty
quite
simple.
No, it's not. It's not
really straightforward.
No, because it has certain allusions to it. Yeah, and I know exactly what you're trying to do, right? But look, I've made it very clear. I was unequivocally against the invasion of Iraq, just like 2 million were when they took to the streets of Hyde Park. And many are even questioning whether it was even a legitimate war. Baroness Manningham Buller advised against it. She said there would be a blowback. But
I'm not disputing any of that.
I make my position very clear that the principle of self-defense applies to all. I don't think any man or any person, any woman, anyone would allow, if they are innocent of any crime, to allow any foreign invader to come into their house and do what they need to do. So I'll apply that principle to everyone.
Yeah, okay, I understand. But I take that to mean that actually you do not only understand but support. You did, because the Iraq War was over, support the killing of coalition forces, including British forces, when the coalition invaded Iraq. Now, I think that is your position.
No,
tell me if it isn't.
Okay, now the position is this: I believe in everyone's right to self-defense.
No, I know, I understand that, and okay.
That's my position.
So you believe that it was right to kill invading British soldiers, let me put it like that, in Iraq. Now, you see, I think most people, most governments, most people in this country would whilst they may they understand the principle, would disagree with you because these are soldiers from their own fellow citizens, and that puts you on a fringe, far away from mainstream majority view, and that is defined as an extreme view. So to that extent, your view is extreme, the government would say.
The government can say what it wants, John, to be honest. I think foreign policy grievances is something that's quite
It's one thing to disagree with foreign policy. It's another thing to support the killing of your fellow citizens.
No, but hold on. The whole issue about
See what I mean?
the whole issue that Muslims have with foreign policy is the invasion of Muslim lands.
Sure.
Is this government's continuous meddling in the Muslim
Yeah, but
world.
a lot of people opposed the Iraq war, but stopped short of supporting their soldiers being killed or being shot.
The way you've termed it, supporting their soldiers getting killed, I don't. Just for the record.
Do you think Muslims should join it?
No, I don't think they should.
Why? Why not?
Until they stop meddling in the affairs, not only of the Muslim world, or generally just...
Which affairs are Britain meddling in now?
I mean, even underhand, behind the curtains, supporting of brutal dictators, selling weapons to countries such as Saudi Arabia, unequivocal support for Israel, all these kind of issues. Once Britain sorts out its own foreign policy, then I'm sure more Muslims would join the army.
So you would urge Muslims to join the British Army?
If any foreign country or army came to attack this country, I'll defend it. I think that's the position not just held by, as you would describe, I have described, extreme fringe. I think many non-Muslims would disagree with the role of the British Army at this current moment.
I just want to finish, if I may, the position on ISIS. I know you've made it absolutely clear you strongly condemn the methods that ISIS have used, and there's no dispute about that. Do you think ISIS deserves obedience? Do you think the people living under the rule of ISIS should obey the ISIS government, whatever you want to call it?
It's either they obey or they rebel.
Yeah, should they rebel?
I think ISIS should be removed.
So they should rebel.
Yeah,
they should fight against ISIS.
Yeah, people should remove ISIS.
So Muslims in Mosul should be resisting against ISIS at the moment, killing ISIS commanders.
Yeah, but you see that.
And so on. Is that right?
Let me just give a bit of context to that, John.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the rise of ISIS. There wouldn't have been an ISIS if there wasn't an invasion of Iraq. And what ISIS is up against is the Assad regime, which has got far more blood in its hands than ISIS. And then you've got the Iraqi government, which is backed by the Iranians, backed by America, and has also got more blood on its hands. It's just that their media campaign is non-existent, whereas ISIS seems to quite proudly post videos of beheadings and so forth. So they have quite a shockingly disgusting media-savvy campaign, which they have, which the Assad regime doesn't have, which the Maliki regime and later the current Iraqi regime don't have. But the different players in these countries where ISIS is up against are equally, if not far worse than ISIS in terms of the blood on their hands. So I think all those elements need to be removed.
By physical force if necessary. Well, I mean, how else are you going to remove them, frankly?
True, no, you're right, but then popular movements have worked and can work. When millions take to the streets, there's only so many you can kill and behead. At the end of the day, I would never want more Muslim bloodshed. I don't want bloodshed full stop, Muslim or non-Muslim. I don't want any kind of bloodshed or war to take place anyway, John.
What would ISIS have to do to make... I mean, you regard the ISIS so-called caliphate as an illegitimate.
Yes, I do.
Do you not? Yeah. What would it have to do to make itself legitimate?
It's too late now. It cannot become illegitimate to legitimate.
Can it not?
No, it can't.
And just to be clear, what is your fundamental objection to ISIS? I know you object to its methods, of course, but in terms of jurisprudence, as it were.
Yeah, the method of its establishment, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he established the first state in Medina, he did so without resorting to violence. And he was welcomed by the people of Medina. Therefore, it was a grassroots support. ISIS did not come to power via grassroots support. They came through violent means, for an armed insurrection, and that goes against the prophetic tradition, and its brutality against minorities is not reflective of the methodology of the Prophet.
You regard, though, members of ISIS as Muslims, do you not?
Yeah, I cannot. Takfir, as you know, or excommunication, is a very dangerous thing. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, actually said that the one who makes takfir, as in calls another person a kafir, or excommunicates him, is indeed a kafir himself. So it's a very, very heavy thing, a very lofty thing. So I wouldn't do this lightly. Misguided, seriously naive, warped. Yeah, but I'm not one of those.
You're in
guys.
opposition to all of
Yeah,
that.
I'm not in a position to do that.
And you regard Osama bin Laden as a Muslim too?
Yeah.
So I come back to my question, why'd you put Sarah Khan's name, why'd you put Muslim in quotes after Sarah Khan? Do you regard her as a Muslim?
Yes, if she believes in the oneness of God and the Prophet Muhammad, yes.
Well, I think I can't speak for her, but I believe she is, in her own terms, an observant Muslim.
If
She
Sarah-
doesn't have to agree with your interpretation of Islam.
But come on,
she-
believing in one God and the Prophet Muhammad is the final messenger. That's not like. Are you gonna say that's a fringe opinion as well?
I obviously can't speak to her, but and I'm certainly not trying to. But I think she would regard herself as a Muslim. Do you regard her as a Muslim?
If you claim to be a Muslim and she says that she believes in one God and the Prophet Muhammad as the final messenger, which is the testimony of faith, for God's
Right.
sake.
Was it a mistake to put Muslim in quotes then after her name?
Not really, no.
Ah,
Because you've interpreted it as me questioning whether she's even a Muslim or not.
well, not me. She did too.
Well, that's, again,
All
these,
Muslims did
again,
too.
no, these things are open to
It's
interpretation.
a sort of TAC-theory.
No,
approach on
not
your
at
part.
all, John.
No?
Let's come on, John.
Right.
Let's not use that kind of language.
Right.
Come on, John. You
I'm
know.
just really aware that we've got about 5 minutes left before we're going to have to start heading to prayers.
Yes.
And there's something I'd like to pick up on.
And I need to make ablution as well.
Exactly. That's
Okay,
why I want to make
I
sure
want to
we've got
get your
enough time.
reaction to the bill. Sorry,
There's
go on.
the-
Yeah, go on.
and
Go
there's
on.
one other thing I'd like to pick up on. At
Yeah.
the very beginning of the interview, when you were talking about the tolerance that observant Muslims should have, you said we are tolerant, but that is changing. I'd just like to follow up on that if you could.
Yes, sure.
Yeah,
Yes, pick that point up.
Yes,
sorry.
so I
Good point.
believe the current government, especially in light of the CTS Act and now the proposed Counter-Extremism Bill, is becoming more and more intolerant of, again, what I perceive to be normative Islam or what you perceive to be fringe or whatever it may be, whatever difference we have. But it is becoming more intolerant to those who do believe in the caliphate. It's becoming more intolerant towards those who do believe in legitimate physical jihad under certain conditions and realities. It is becoming more intolerant towards aspects of Sharia law. It is becoming more intolerant to what Muslims just genuinely believe. They're not thinking about implementing it here, advocating it here, calling for it here, and I believe.
But I understand, but I think the government's view would be that whilst you may not be advocating it here, it's the world's becoming a village these days. It's globalized, it's interconnected, and those borders in terms of mindsets don't really mean what they used to mean. So you advocating some of these things which would be antithetical to British values for Islamic states or Muslim countries abroad has a blowback here. I think that's their argument.
I think, again, the biggest blowback issue.
It helps keep young Muslims angry is the point, I think.
No. You see, the biggest anger factor with young Muslims and the blowback, the fear of blowback and national security threat is from the British government itself. It's not got to do with concepts of caliphate.
Really?
Yeah.
So ideology's got nothing to do with violent extremism?
No, I think the biggest issue about radicalization and extremism is foreign policy, Western foreign policy.
Not ideology.
If I had to break it down in percentage, first of all, I think the whole term radicalization, as if like radicalization automatically links you to violent extremism, again, is empirically flawed. It's been academically refuted.
But look, terrorism always draws on ideology, always. I'm not disputing the fact that
Political violence.
that alienation, questions of identity and all that may well help.
Those who believe carrying or committing acts of terrorism and violence in this country against its own citizens, this is an ultra fringe minority. This is like people who believe that you can do that. When Al Jazeera interviewed Osama bin Laden, and they said to him, "Why do you do this? Why do you go around bombing people around and calling for people to carry out these acts in Western countries?" You know what he turned around and said? He said, "Because they do it to us." Yeah? He actually said that to an Al Jazeera journalist. So as you can see, some could read that as Osama bin Laden has applied a Western policy, a Western principle of invading countries, attacking countries, Iraq, Afghanistan. If they're not invading, then at least supporting brutal dictators and selling weapons
That's why
to them.
Osama bin Laden bombed the embassies in Kenya the Americans have gone nowhere near Kenya.
No, but we all know very well that the Kenyan security services are very close to that of the British, American, and Israeli security services. What I'm trying to say here is that the whole issue about ideology, right, and violent extremism, it's warped in the sense that it's not. Can you empirically substantiate it? Is there anything to empirically substantiate that ideology or Islamist ideology is always linked to?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why I think ideology is a major factor. How else can you explain the fact that most ISIS recruits are Muslims from Muslim countries?
Yeah.
Some of them are run by Sharia, where presumably they don't have issues about their identity or alienation. They are fully integrated citizens who want to fight for ISIS. That's why I'm suggesting to you that ideology is a major factor in violent jihad,
So can I
offensive jihad.
Okay, so can I respond to that? Yeah. First of all, those individuals that you just said that come from Islamic countries that implement Sharia law, again, I unequivocally reject and disagree with you because, as I said to you earlier, there are no country that I believe at the moment that can be described as an Islamic country which has Sharia.
Yeah.
So when you say that these individuals have gone to join ISIS, they've gone and left secular countries, and they have a.
No, I'm talking about the ones who've left. You know, countries like Saudi Arabia or Morocco or whatever. These are Islamic countries. They've left. They don't have. It's often suggested in this country that the principal drivers of radicalisation, towards violent extremism, issues like identity, alienation, and all of that. I'm suggesting the fact that the vast majority of ISIS recruits are Muslims from countries where they have no conflict of identity and alienation.
Again, we're going to have to disagree on this matter, John, because you may think that there's not an identity crisis. I think there is an identity crisis.
But not for Muslims going to fight there.
No, but I still do think that Muslims, even in Morocco and Saudi Arabia, have an identity crisis. Do you understand?
I have two questions, but we're going to have to stop.
No, but I have to say one more thing. Sorry, Chloe, because it's directly linked to this, right? The two biggest terrorist attacks that we've had in this country is what? 7/7? And obviously we had the murder of Lee Rigby.
Yeah.
The two individuals, the perpetrators, Michael Balaji and Mohammed Sadiq, they explicitly mentioned Iraq. They explicitly mentioned foreign policy. So now you're going to tell me that's ideology, or is that foreign policy?
We need to ask him. I just want to know whether you're worried about this bill and whether
Yes.
it's going to affect you.
Yes,
And if you do come under the remit of this bill, what it will mean for you. What are you going to do?
Yes, let me ask you. That's a good question. Yes, if you are caught up by this bill, if it becomes law, and you or people who think like you, share your views, are caught by it, prevented from saying, let's say, promoting the idea of a caliphate in the rest of the world, somewhere in the rest of the world. I mean, how will you react, and what do you think that will do? What do you think the reaction will be?
I mean, personally speaking, God tests those that He loves. This is a concept that I believe in. I believe that life in itself is a long journey of trials and tribulations. And what you'll actually end up doing is that instead of actually challenging these opinions and these positions intellectually, right, the government has only made itself be perceived as a very weak government. And actually what you're doing is you're going to, something that's merely a concept, and one that is just a concept, you're going to drive this underground, and you're going to possibly exacerbate the situation. I mean, maybe, young men, they love like wow factors, right? Something that's niche. So if you put something underground, that's what's going to happen. Me personally, what would I do? I'll carry on doing what I'm doing, which is I write, I blog, I commentate, I'm a pundit. I'll continue advising charities how to improve their media and PR, what I do for a living. That's what I continue doing.
Final question. You have used the word criminalise Islamic beliefs. You think this bill is criminalising Islamic beliefs?
Of course.
Just explain exactly what you mean.
Because I believe that the belief in a caliphate is an Islamic belief. I believe that the legitimate act of jihad in certain conditions and realities is a legitimate Islamic belief. I believe that Sharia, of course, is an integral part of the religion. It's God's law. I believe many aspects of the religion which is now being targeted or will be targeted by the looks of it under the new Counter-Extremism Bill.
And to be clear, you're not advocating those ideas for this country. You are advocating them, you're promoting them, you support them in respect of countries, Muslim countries abroad. The government's view, it seems, the way I read it, I don't know, this is the way I read it, is that because it's now a globalised world, that has an impact back here on young Muslims. That's the danger.
But what kind of impact would it have? That's what I'm
A
interested in.
radicalising impact is their view.
Well, radicalising impact, again, I said to you, and I'll make this very clear, perhaps it's something that we differ on and something I differ with the government on, is that they believe ideology is a problem. I believe foreign policy is a problem. But just to clarify, again, I've said it twice in this interview and I'll say it again. The issue of an establishment of a caliphate in a peaceful manner, and for it to have grassroots support, for it to be wanted and desired by the masses is what I believe. I believe that it should never be imposed on people. I believe in the prophetic tradition, and that is that you do not impose it on people. People should want it, yearn for it, desire it. And that's only when it will really come around in a very grassroots, natural way, not in an unnatural, brutal, nasty
But
way.
it'll never happen here in Britain.
Nah, I don't know. It'll never happen here in Britain. I don't know. 100, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, who knows?
Did you answer the question whether you think the bill's going to target you and whether you're frightened?
Oh, I think from John's whole interview, it appears I will be targeted.
Well, no, but I think it's a good point. Simple question. Is your reading of what is proposed likely to target you?
Yes, I think it will target me.
Thanks, Dilly.
Yeah, no worries.